here's another one for Robert. Getting into the mind of a man. Thank you so much for joining us today on Second Act TV. Once again, I want to welcome back Robert Manni, the author of The Guys Guide for Love and host of Guys Guy Radio and TV. Robert, as usual, thank you for being here.
I love being here. Thanks for having me back, Silka. Hello, everybody.
I came across another article. I said, here's another one for Robert. Getting into the mind of a man. And this one was interesting. It's the overarching theme is, stuff we talk about on Second Act. But the specific points here, the top 5 things that make men tick, I found very interesting the way this was written. And I should preface it by saying it was, again, a woman that wrote it. So that's one thing that you and I always question. Does a woman really know what makes men tick? And then 2, she's a therapist. She's a PhD. She specializes in this. And some of the advice, it threw me a little bit. So that's what I want to discuss with you today, Robert. Is that okay?
Let's do it.
Okay. Number 1, never let a man decide what you get in love. I'm not sure what that has to do with making him tick, but here's our point. That do not give a man the power to not give you the love that you want. Communicate with him not about what you want him to do, but what you want for yourself. Because then he knows and wants to give you what you want. I don't quite get the point here, but talk to me from a man's perspective.
I think I know where this PhD is coming from. Again, as you stated, it's not really about what makes men tick. It's about how women can kind of manage the process with a man to get him to give her what she needs on her terms.
Right.
So I don't think there's anything wrong with that a woman needs to let the guy know kind of this is how I want to be loved, or this is how I see things. If it's not manipulative, I think it's good. But I don't think that's necessarily about what makes men tick. This is more about how to manage the relationship from the woman's perspective. And that's at least my take on it.
Well, and the reason I'm questioning this is not just to, pick this apart and throw anybody under the bus, but when you Google these things, this is what comes up. This is what people read who are looking for advice in this regard. And that's why I think these conversations are important, because if I'm a woman, I'm looking for this. Yeah, I want to know what makes men tick. This is what I get. And that's why I want you and I to talk about it. I think the point here under number 1, is that if a man feels like you're trying to change him, that will automatically turn him off, and the relationship won't go anywhere. And maybe that's what makes him tick there. Well, let's go on to number 2. Do not accept substandard treatment. That men do not want to be able to walk all over you. That they want a woman that they can respect. They want someone this is interesting, they want someone who would leave them before they would tolerate poor, lazy treatment.
Well, I agree. Do not accept substandard treatment from anybody, male or female. I don't think anybody wants that. Men do not want to be able to walk all over you. I think so. I think what men want, and from my perspective, my opinion is, I don't want to be with somebody who I could walk all over. You want somebody who can stand their ground and has self-respect. And I think that's the main point there. And again, I don't think this is necessarily what makes men tick. I think it's just a trait of like just being self-aware, where you want to be with somebody, you respect yourself and you want to respect your partner. That's nothing. I don't think that's anything new.
She must hear this a lot, that, women allow themselves to be walked all over. And I've seen it in lots of relationships. And maybe that's a good point here that we need to throw out. Don't be a doormat. And they say here, or she says, it's kind of interesting the way she wrote it, that men like the challenge. So do not be afraid to challenge him, that this turns him on. Do you agree with that?
I would agree with that to a point. You know, because you want somebody that has a backbone that's not going to just roll over. Because it's no fun if you just get everything you want from the, you know, your partner so easily. And if they're making sense on something, they should challenge you. If they challenge your behavior when it's not correct, that's a good thing. You want that honesty and the integrity there. I mean, it's just one of those points where, yes, men want a woman who will stand up for herself. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I think for me, the key words here and that I want to convey to women, because this is directed more to women, is do not let yourself be walked all over. And you can have that and you can stop that and you can implement those barriers without being nasty about it. Just go, you know what, I'm not going to put up with this. I'm sorry, but this is not free. And yeah, I do think people in general and men do respect that. So, okay, good point. I'm glad we discussed that. 3, give him his freedom. We've talked about this before, her point that men need freedom and are attracted to women who don't keep him from doing the things he enjoys. And that is something that if you're, can make him feel like he can do whatever, he wants, basically, that will make you very attractive.
Yeah, I think attractive is the key word there, because I don't think that makes you attractive or unattractive. I think that a man wants his freedom, and to a point. I mean, I ruined one relationship because I just played golf all the time. I would go out in the morning on a Saturday and I would come back Saturday night, and then I was tired, or we'd have dinner or something. And then Sunday I want to go out and play golf again. And sometimes on Friday also. And it was just too much. Yeah. So, but I heard about it after the relationship ended, not during the relationship, because my partner at the time didn't lay down the law and say, you got to spend more time with me. So I think communication, the key there is, men want their freedom, but they'll probably take advantage of it unless you put some boundaries there. And I don't think there's anything wrong with setting some boundaries if they're reasonable. And I don't think guys will have any problem with the boundaries if they're reasonable.
Yeah. You brought up a great point here that I want to go back to, is that you didn't hear about it until after the relationship ended. And so many men, after they get dumped, whatever, whether it be divorce or relationship, blindsided. And women are to blame, perhaps. Some I'm like that. I let things build up until I'm done, and that's blindsiding, because so I put myself in that category. It's a bad thing to do. So I want other women to hear that if you're really dealing with something that you're going to explode eventually, then find a way to bring it up to where it's not going to get to that point.
It's a communication issue, because I think a lot of times what happens is the woman will be articulating what she feels is an issue, and the man isn't hearing her the way she intended. Yeah. And maybe in her head she's communicating it clearly, but maybe he's not picking up, or he's not paying attention. And he's not listening or paying attention the right way. And I think that's where we have so many disconnects. And then what happens is the woman says, I'm done. Yeah. And I've heard that before. And she's done because it's been building up. And the guy was unaware, because either, and maybe a combination of, he hasn't been paying attention, and he hasn't heard the words the way he would articulate them. Because usually what happens with guys, and I'll say this is my opinion, is that if things are going okay, you're not going to hear too much about it. If a guy has an issue, often he'll bring it up and say, this is my issue. He'll listen to what you have to say, talk about it a little bit, and then that's it. And then he'll determine that's BS, or I can deal with that. And then he'll just keep going. And that's how a lot of us guys are, and not everyone, but and that's how I am, where that's it. And I forget about the issue. But a lot of times the woman will have an issue about something, and she'll start to talk about it in a way where she thinks the voice in her head is really loud, but the voice coming out of her mouth to her boyfriend or partner is not quite as loud or clear or concise. And there's a disconnect there. And then she thinks, he should know all of this. Or why doesn't he know this? Because it's in her head. And sometimes that's not totally fair, because if the guy's not paying attention, then you got to bring it up. You got to be clear and say, hey, we've got to talk about this. This is important.
Yeah. Well, she does drive home, be clear and concise and short. That's what men need.
Yeah.
So, and I
Mhm.
guess that's not a put down that men are simple or simplistic. It's just they need short and clear and concise.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I hear what you're saying, because again, you
Right.
just described me. Number 4 here, be positive and act mature. Be fun. Bring a positive attitude to the environment. That it's a turn off when women whine, pressure, or complain. So
Well, of course, but if a guy isn't paying attention, then you're going to get some of that, and every guy has a different capacity to take that, and every woman has a different capacity to dish that out. Being positive, if you're a guy, you want to be with a woman who's makes you laugh, who's fun. She doesn't have to be funny like humorous, but at least has a positive vibe that it
yeah,
feels good to be around her. And I think it's the same when a woman wants to be with a guy who has a positive vibe. It's so
yeah.
important, not just for compatibility, just for like you want to be with positive people.
Yeah. Here's the maybe not a disconnect, but a little issue I had with this is her using the words whine, pressure, or complain right after the first 2 points,
Yeah.
where she was so direct about state what you want, don't accept this, blah blah blah, which I agree with. What's the difference between that and whining and putting pressure on it, or complaining? That's where when I read that, I said, is this good advice? At least qualify what that means, because
Yeah.
where's that line that you cross? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Silka. There's a gap, a huge chasm between
Mm-hmm.
stating your intention and stating what's important to you, and that doesn't mean you're whining and complaining. That coming on the back of that other sentence, I think, didn't help her point.
Yeah, no, it didn't. And again, I don't mean to just criticize on that, but it struck me so hard. It's like, well, what does she mean? What are we supposed to do? And if I think that, then I know other women are too. So that's, I wanted to point that out.
Mm.
So number 5, then the final point here is attraction. And I thought this was interesting. Men are attracted to what they cannot control or predict. They obsess over women who flirt, give them attention, and they don't feel the need to talk the next day.
Well, yeah, this is one where we have to kind of parse it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Men are, everybody, if you're a guy, you're interested in a sense, you have a sense of adventure. So something you can't predict or control, there's an excitement factor to
Mm-hmm.
that. But you don't want to be with a partner who's out of control and so
Mm-hmm.
unpredictable that what's she going to do now? Right? She going to flash the table or what? What's happening
I
here?
know.
So there's a big difference between that. And then she says neediness and desperation are big attraction killers for men. Yes, I agree, but that's a completely different point.
Mm-hmm.
Men
Mm-hmm.
fall in love with your absence while you fall in love with their presence. Well, that's not good. Men should fall in love with your presence.
I was going
Not
to
just,
ask you about that. I was going to
yeah.
ask you about that point.
Okay.
Yeah, she says that you got to remember that, yeah, that we women fall in love while we're with the guy, and men fall in love with us when we're not there, like thinking about us. I've never heard that, I don't think.
I never heard that as something about men. That's a male trait or what makes us tick. I don't know where that came from, and I don't
Yeah.
necessarily agree with it, and I don't think it's necessarily a good thing, because what is that? Oh, I love her when she's not here. She's easier to love that way.
Oh, that's really funny. That's really
you
funny.
you need to love the person when you're with them, as well as when they're apart. I know absence makes the heart grow fonder, sure, but you
Yeah.
want them to be present also.
Yeah, I think this was very confusing. And then the whole not, that give them attention and then don't feel the need to talk the next day. I think I don't know. I didn't like that at all. That, you have fun, yeah, oh, I'm so fun. We're doing this. We're having a great time. And then, okay, I can't talk to him the next day. This almost made me like walk on eggshells after I read that.
Yeah, I wouldn't like that. I mean, if I'm having fun with somebody the next day, they're a different person and they're not going to talk to me. I'll be like, well, who is this? The person with multiple personalities I'm dealing with? Who's my girlfriend here? Yeah,
Well,
who's
no,
my partner?
I think that what she meant, and maybe I'm wrong, is that the guy, it's okay for the guy not to call you the next day. That it's not necessary. That you don't expect that just because you had fun today. I maybe I'm misinterpreting this, but
Okay.
that's what I didn't like. Maybe am I wrong there?
Listen, at the beginning, there's some romance, there's some dating, there's some game playing that goes on, in a fun way. But once you get to have a relationship, then you need to be in touch. You need to be letting your partner know how you're doing and just be, yeah, you want to be there. It's about being present.
Yeah.
And that's really important.
Yeah, I think that we're starting to come to the end here. The reason that I wanted to talk with you about this is because, again, the mixed messages in here, whether does this have any substance in that sense? A lot of the points are, we've talked about it before, but this was, I don't know, something struck me as different here. And for something that comes up as a top search thing, I think it needs to be scrutinized a little bit. So thank you for indulging me in that, Robert. Anything you want to add before we end
Well,
this?
I think, our goal was not to trash the writer. There's some good points that are made. I think maybe the stumbling block that we had was some of the points had contradictions in them or were two different separate ideas. But the bottom line is you have to be yourself and be kind and be there, be present for your partner. Always a good idea. Men like that.
I that's good. Yeah, it is. We're already confused enough. So this exactly. I felt like this didn't help. So Robert, as usual, I'll link to all your information to your radio show. You're now on UK Health Radio all over the world. And then of course, I can find you here on YouTube as well. And I look so forward to having you back on soon on Second Act TV.
Me too. Thank you, Silka.